Rain hammered against the pavement like murmurs of 1,000 secrets, drowning out the city's moans. Through the veil of water, a woman stood, clutching a rain-soaked envelope with trembling hands. "Does this mean war?" she whispered into the storm, her voice carried away, absorbed by the night. The small cafe was losing its glow. The last customers filed out, their laughter fading into the night. Isabella wiped the counters with the practiced ease of a seasoned waitress, her fingers moving swiftly, diligently. To the patrons, she was invisible until she wasn't. Today she'd overheard them, the men in tailored suits with voices coarse as gravel. They spoke in code, their words wrapping around her spine like a chill. The envelope had slipped from one of their jackets, unnoticed, settling into her dustpan like some forgotten sin. She might have left it there, abandoned among the crumbs of discord and pizzas half-eaten, if only her curiosity hadn't whispered otherwise. Isabella, with her raven curls and olive skin, had always been dismissed as the pretty face scuttling between tables. Her dreams were modest, her presence soft a pane of glass. Others looked through without seeing her. Yet beneath her skin lay a resilience, etched by years of surviving, not thriving. "Isabella, your head's in the clouds again," Marco teased, dumping his kitchen apron on the counter. "You know Jim will dock your pay if you keep daydreaming." Chuckling, she pocketed the envelope, her fingers brushing the embossed insignia, a lion roaring through an olive branch. It felt heavy, important in a way that told of fortunes and fears entwined. Yeah, she replied, her eyes darting towards the clock ticking down to midnight. Isabella made her way home through the rain that made the streets gleam like molten silver. The pressure was everywhere, in the air she breathed, and in her pocket, whispering its own kind of promise. It was not until she sat at her kitchen table, the envelope before her, that she peeled it open, her heart in her throat. Inside, a letter penned with a kind of elegance she had never seen. This was more than just paper, it was stories encased in ink, power-clad in words. Her eyes widened as she read, the words a mosaic of threat and command from one Don Alvaro Moretti. The name singing with a fearsome echo across the city streets, fear dressed in power and whispered respect. "There had to be a mistake," she muttered, the realization crashing with the weight of an avalanche. The letter detailed something sinister, a transaction, more than illegal. It was immoral, involving trafficking that churned her stomach. She should have been afraid, thrown it away, but this was personal, her city, her people. It was her moral compass that twisted as she thought of all those trapped. Invisible chains sang through her. She wasn't like them, those hardened men. She had compassion where they had cruelty. Every step she took deeper into the city's underbelly carried more risk. She felt eyes on her back, whispers behind shifting shadows. The cafe was safer, sanctuary in daylight where danger dared not shout, but at night, it was a different beast. Over the days, Isabella moved cautiously, the weight of knowing pressing down on her. Alvaro's men were everywhere, moving like currents beneath the city's surface. Every night she would return to the letter, tracing the lines, its danger drawing her in, like metal to a magnet. One evening, as she locked up the cafe, she was cornered. It was subtle, almost gentle. The dark figure with the smell of gunmetal and cologne drifted close, trapping her against the doorway. "You have something of ours," he murmured, his voice smooth as polished stone, eyes dark, patience thin. Isabella met his gaze with a look fortified by the weight of untold stories. "I don't know what you mean." A pause. The man's smile was tight. "We'll be in touch." The threat lingered like cigarette smoke as he vanished into the night, leaving her skin prickling, adrenaline coursing light speed through her veins. She was in deeper than she had intended, yet there was no turning back. Then came the reveal, a skill, something pure and unexpectedly powerful. Her grandfather's words from when she was a child returned to her. "Sometimes it's not the fist that wins the battle, Bella, but the mind." She had always been good with understanding systems, patterns, an analyst in a waitress's apron. This was a game, and she was just beginning. She surveyed the symbols, the codes in the letter, realizing a folly among them, missteps she could exploit. Strength lay not in confrontation, but calculation. That night in her cramped apartment, boxes of her dreams stacked to the ceiling, she began her quiet rebellion. She contacted an underground network she barely believed existed, those interested less in profit and more in justice. A plan was forming, intricate as lace, built on whispers and shadows to stand against a storm. Her heart pounded with hope as dawn broke, a truce between light and dark. Her movements became a dance of wariness and courage, each step orchestrated carefully. Alvaro's men grew agitated, their confidence wavering as Isabella worked silently, unseen beneath their notice. Then the night came when she was no longer invisible, her presence felt, her actions echoing louder than gunfire. It was a direct confrontation, words slung like arrows. "You think you can hide forever, little waitress?" Alvaro's voice bellowed through the hallway of her cafe-turned-battlefield. Isabella stood her ground, courage etched into every feature, her lip curling into a faint, knowing smile. "Hide? I'm declaring war for love, for justice." In the silence that followed, a revelation hovered between them, respect born of defiance, and a pause heavy with the future's uncertainty. The flickering bulb above swung slightly in the breeze, casting shifting shadows across Alvaro's face, a silent testament to the balance of power no longer tipped in his favor. "What happens now, little waitress?" he asked, curiosity roughening his voice. Isabella merely looked into his eyes, unflinching. "You tell me," she replied, her voice steady and sure. And from the dim corner of the room, a shadow emerged, barely discernible, a symbol of impending decisions, a figure wrapped in ambiguity, waiting for the story to unfold. "I always appreciated a woman who's willing to declare war for love," Alvaro said, his laughter mingling with the rain pattering on the car's hood outside. "Unfortunately, love makes you vulnerable." Isabella stood in the dimly lit cafe, the rain still whispering against the windows like a persistent lover. She couldn't show fear, not now. Her resolve was a thin but unyielding thread weaving through this tense tableau. She had not returned to her modest apartment after confronting Alvaro. Instead, she opted for the openness of the outside world, seeking solace beneath the city's perpetually gray sky. As she walked through the bustling streets, her mind flickered with details others would gloss over. The corners show easily they could hide secrets. The face show often a smile was a mask. At the heart of the city, Isabella found herself facing her reflection in a storefront. Her raven curls hung like a defiant flag, soaked and heavy, framing the resolute lines of her face. She was a nobody, a mere waitress, but tonight she carried herself with the bearing of a queen. Her reflection wavered as a bus splashed through a puddle, droplets cascading like silver bullets. "Hey, Bella, what are you doing out here?" A familiar voice called, pulling her from her reverie. It was Marco, her colleague from the cafe. He appeared by her side like a silent ally, his eyes curious, concerned. "Just thinking," Isabella replied, her gaze fixed on the horizon where the city lights bled into the night sky. "Thinking? Or are you unsettled by those suits that were at the cafe?" "You know, I got a feeling they're trouble." Marco's voice was laced with an edge of brotherly worry. Unbeknownst to him, he had placed himself unwittingly on the fringes of a war he could not comprehend. "Marco, don't worry about me," she assured, her voice soft yet firm. "There are things you don't have to understand. Just know I've got it under control." His laughter was a small comfort, a splash of warmth against the cold unease that draped over her like fog. "How can you be sure? You're just a waitress." Just a waitress, how those words used to sting. Yet now they were her armor. Her invisibility was her strength. She was the shadow in plain sight. Unfazed, Isabella continued her day's routine, her mind a whirl of bullet points and battle strategies. Alvaro was a beast, no doubt, but a beast blinded by his own hubris, anticipating threats from the outside while ignoring the storm gathering within. By dusk, the cafe was buzzing with its usual clientele. The aroma of fresh espresso wound comfortingly through the air, wrapping around Isabella like an embrace. She smiled as she served her tables, each step measured, every move deliberate. Alvaro's men patrolled the edges of the cafe, their eyes lingering on her with a promise of malice. She had expected this, they didn't scare her. Not anymore. In the safety of the layout she knew by heart, Isabella clutched a token concealed in her pocket, a small lion insignia, the symbol she had etched onto a coin, a talisman of both promise and defiance. She would need every ounce of strength, every drop of cunning. The night stretched on, each tick of the clock an impending heartbeat. And then, the door chimed its mechanical greeting, announcing the arrival of a man who drew a collective hush among patrons. He was a stranger to most, but familiar enough to the few who mattered. Lorenzo, a man whose gaze could cast silence, entered with the authority of someone used to wielding power. "Miss Isabella," he addressed her, a subtle nod of respect marking his acknowledgement. The room held its breath, the tension a sharp knife edge ready to cut through the din. Isabella met his eyes, unwavering. "Your reputation precedes you," Lorenzo said, "the one who defied Don Alvaro." There it was, respect curled into the syllables of her name, once used to summon orders and now to evoke inspiration. She was no boss, but she wielded an influence that had grown, silently, like ivy curling around the deadwood of corruption. "I was just standing for what's right," she replied, her voice a beacon of calm. The patrons resumed their conversations, their curiosity shifting like tides. But the silent exchange between Isabella and Lorenzo was not lost. It was the tremor before a quake. As the night deepened, Isabella's mind churned with strategies. She wasn't alone in this fight. Her invisible allies grew in numbers with every whispered word. The underground network she had contacted moved with its own pace, fluid and untraceable, like water seeking cracks in stone. Yet even as she strategized, shadows moved closer. Peril, like the scent of gunmetal, was inescapable. It crept over her shoulder when no one watched. Every night, under the cover of rain and uncertainty, Isabella explored the path chosen. And every night, Alvaro and his men sank deeper into a misjudged confidence. The confrontation came under the low-hanging bulbs of a secluded alleyway. The ambient noise of the city provided a cover for the clandestine meeting. Here, Isabella stood, the undercurrent of fear tempered by adrenaline. Before her, Alvaro stepped into the light, a predator basking in its own territory, his smirk a chilling promise. "You've been quite the thorn, little one," he said, circling her like a predator assessing a cub. The confrontation was direct, unmasked by pretense or politeness. Isabella's choice to meet him here was not arbitrary, it was tactical. She had the ground prepared, every shadow under her watch, every exit marked. "I'm not going away," Isabella declared, her voice a steady brook against his roaring river. "Love makes you vulnerable, yes, but it also makes you strong. Strong enough to topple a kingdom built on sins." Alvaro halted his pacing, eyes narrowing. "What do you hope to gain?" She took a breath, steadying the pulse that threatened to betray her calm. "This isn't about gain, it's about freedom, and you're either with me or against me." A silence wove into their words, heavy with unsaid possibilities. "Impressive," Alvaro muttered, watching her with newfound intrigue. His respect, however reluctant, was unmistakable. A moonbeam sliced through the alleyway, casting a line between them, a demarcation that promised change. With that, Isabella drew back, not in retreat but in silent victory. Alvaro was not defeated, but he was shaken, his confidence skewed by a waitress's unexpected prowess. In the end, as she departed into the night's embrace, a shadow trailed behind her, showing her a symbol of impending choices, an echo of what was yet to come. And the rain fell, a precursor to a storm that promised to cleanse and drown in equal measure. "You've seen nothing yet," came the silhouette's parting words, wrapping Isabella in its enigmatic promise. "You think you've seen the storm, but it's barely begun," Isabella uttered, her voice slicing through the dim glow of street lamps. Every breath of wind carried a whispering chill as she faced the encroaching shadows, knowing that eyes watched from unseen corners. Isabella, the waitress whose world had turned upon finding that fateful letter, now stood at the center of a gathering tempest. Beneath the layers of clothes that shielded her from the biting air, Isabella hid the weight of a new resolve. She had come to be underestimated too many times by the city, by those Mafia men, and sometimes by herself. But transformation brewed beneath her calm veneer, intensifying with each encounter. "You're still just a waitress," Marco had told her earlier, laughter in his voice, but concern in his eyes. As she moved through her humble apartment, the sentiment clung to her mind like frost. Was she fighting a battle too big for one invisible woman? Isabella's home was a tapestry of stories untold, walls lined with books she'd accumulated from donations and finds at sidewalk sales, each a treasure of forgotten knowledge. Old photographs lay scattered across her coffee table, featuring a girl younger and more naive, once dreaming of simpler things. Now they were talismans, urging her not to settle for less than the future she could sculpt. That evening, as the rain tapped an insistent rhythm against the windows, she found Sephra standing outside her door, the teen she had once taken under her wing. "Isabella," Sephra said, her voice tight, half lost in the shadows. "They're looking for you." Compassionate yet defiant, Isabella nodded, welcoming Sephra into her refuge. Each word they whispered was a stone in the foundation of her plana network of individuals barely seen, but each connected. They brewed tea, the scent of herbs mingling with the cold air seeping through cracked panes, forming a momentary sanctuary. Days rolled into one another like whispered melodies. Alvaro grew restless in the wake of her challenge, his men patrolling with increased rigor, the lions looking for their prey. She was aware of their eyes, their rumors, of how quickly stories grew wings. A week later, she attended a clandestine meeting in the cellar of an aged bakery. It was one of many such sites, each carefully chosen, known only to those with a need and a purpose. Lorenzo was there, the quiet strength in his stance speaking volumes. "You've stirred something, Miss Isabella," he murmured, respect lacing his words. "Rumors travel, and now others wish to hear this voice of yours." In the dimly lit space where flower dust hung like memories in the air, Isabella outlined her strategy, a web spun from hope and relentless willpower. It would not be easy, but in those moments, she felt her courage solidify into something almost tangible. However, as plans matured, so did dangers. Alvaro's network wasn't made of fools. Oversight was an unlikely comfort. Threats grew subtler yet sharper, pressing against her resolve like a vine threatening to choke. But it was the subtle arrogance that would be their undoing, she mused. Hours slipped into uneasy sleep, dreams plagued by faces of those forced into shadows, the very ghosts the letter had unearthed. Isabella carried their voices with her through waking hours, each contributing to the tapestry of her rebellion. Soon a message arrived, understated yet heavy with significance, a coded signal of allies rising, readiness, edging, acceptance. It was the ignition she needed, leading to a moment she could only describe as an awakening. The day unfolded with a strange clarity, as if the outlines of her world had been redrawn. She found herself in the cloak of an underground parlor that evening, tension coiling around her heart like a serpent awakened. Alvaro's threat of violence shadowed the atmosphere, yet Isabella shone with an inner light that none could dim. The climax came unexpectedly, in the form of a confrontation beneath the city's iron embrace. Isabella faced Alvaro in an empty garage, scents of oil and concrete mingling with the scent of danger. "You're walking a precarious path," he warned, his shadow towering yet soured by the wavering confidence behind his eyes. "And what of you, Alvaro?" Isabella replied, certain that her voice carried more strength than his army. "You're standing on quicksand, and you don't even know it." The truth lingered between them, heavy as lead, yet empowering as liberation. She felt a shift then, an imperceptible tilt that signaled the world's silent alignment. In that moment, danger became a backdrop, and Isabella, the vivid protagonist, no longer bound by the chains of destiny, but by the freedom to write her own. As they parted, the resolution given life through unspoken understanding, Alvaro's figure faded into the distance. But the battle had merely shifted, not concluded. At the edge of the scene, a subtle gesture caught her eye, a shadow moving swiftly out of place, a token of what lay ahead. Her journey was just beginning, and as she turned back toward the encompassing city, the untold stories of thousands walked with her, mere silhouettes waiting for their time to step into the light. For Isabella, the path had never been clearer, nor her resolve more forged by fire. She smiled slightly, knowing the war for justice, born of love, would echo through the very streets they sought to reclaim. A new chapter awaited, and the shadows whispered promises of allies yet unseen, destinies yet defined. Lights flashed across the pavement as her body hit the cold, hard ground. She didn't see it coming, a blow out of nowhere knocking the wind from her chest, leaving breath hanging in the air, unseen. Isabella tasted coppery fear as she forced herself upright, a primal instinct driving her before thought could catch hold. The street was unforgiving, washed in the yellow glow of passing headlights, each car a fleeting spectator to the theater of desperation playing out below. Before her, a world bustling past, oblivious to a woman on the brink of Waitress, seemingly mundane, burdened by unrelenting truths no one would choose to see. But Isabella was more than they perceived. Behind soft eyes was a spirit honed by survival, resolving to forge path where others saw only walls. Only hours earlier, within the safe clutches of her modest apartment, she'd held counsel with her scattered allies. Each one a whisper stronger than the last, secrets shared against walls that held the residue of dreamed rebellions yet to bloom. They had moved within shadows, the air charged with intent, Sephra, eager and unseasoned, Lorenzo, with knowledge weighed by silent scars, and others like them, unseen threads weaving into the fabric of her silent defiance. I believed once, Lorenzo spoke, his words deliberate, casting a soft echo within the room. And it's enough I believe again now, through you. But belief carried with it burdens, and Isabella felt its weight as much as she sensed its power, a responsibility to see it through, to let hope eclipse fear. Hours slipped by, tethered to plans nestled beneath everyday routine. Isabella danced through responsibilities amid the cafe's gentle chaos. Each cup served a reminder of normalcy she had vowed silently to defend. But reality never strayed far. The men in dark suits, Alvaro's shadowed emissaries, lingered at the periphery of her vision, reminders that her actions had strands woven far beyond coffee-swilled counters. The night had set all possibilities in motion, the culmination of countless small acts, tirelessly sown seeds. The corridor stretched ahead, narrowing into a confrontation she felt humming beneath her skin. The alley where fate had led her, it was expectedly unexpected. A strategic domain chosen not hastily but with forethought, balancing of dangers and boldness. Alvaro, predictable yet unpredictable, materialized from within his gathered force. Confidence flourished around him, half his power from those who followed without question. You should have yielded by now, Alvaro said, his posture lofted on a sea of smugness, the air heavy with impending displays of power. You mean nothing, Isabella. Nothing but a name tossed between shadows. Despite the bruises blossoming under her skin, Isabella stood resolute, a tempest within serene eyes. A name, she repeated, the words taking shape as she clutched the talisman in her pocket to line insignia. And yet, it defies you still. Alvaro's facade flickered, a flame caught in a wind's capricious sway. Darkness threatened to close upon her, yet with presence unwavering, Isabella did not yield. Her allies' strategic murmurs echoed through her mind, igniting seconds that stretched into eternity. You're deaf to their whispers, Lorenzo had instructed. It's time they heard yours. And so she let it fall, words born of her own choosing, quicksilver courage unsparing within a deliberate pause. This isn't just defiance, Alvaro. It's an exodus from your tyranny, from everything you symbolize. Something shifted the air, perhaps, or the terrain. A subtle unraveling of assuredness began to coil around Alvaro's voice. Isabella did not relent, power dancing on the edge of that careful balance she courted. Concrete cooled beneath her touch as she employed her own sleight of hand, hidden like the scars she bore within a ledger of wrongs tempting justice. It was a gift from improbable allies, unveiled in opportune time. Information rooted within Alvaro's own house. Beneath the shadowy, whispering canopy of the street, the enormity of her revelation sank beneath the surface of her words like a sunken ship. The hidden truths, layers peeled back, left Alvaro exposed momentarily. A kingpin undone by his own pursuits, she murmured, the ethereal echo of assurance crafting pillars of fire. It was here the culmination of past actions caught in a nexus woven of tension and potential. And Isabella, perpetually dismissed, presented her final, unanticipated maneuver, a message amplified in the plethora of silent voices at her back. The slow-building crescendo moment by moment, as Alvaro stepped back, felt beneath his ironclad exterior the stirring of mortal unease, trapped within brittle machismo. They didn't see her coming, those who lived by underestimations. Hers was an intricate dance of invisible footfalls that left a path marked by raw intention. Alvaro, caught by surprise and off balance, reeled internally even as he attempted to regain control. Yet before him stood not an army, but a singular force refusing to yield. With breadth of silence enveloping their confrontation, Isabella's instincts took the helm, guiding her toward inevitability and beyond. Quietly, the others emerged from obscurity. They had been out of sight, now under watchful participation, sentinels of reborn freedom drawn from depths rarely seen. Alvaro faced her as her unwavering gaze met his own uncertainty, a palpable realization sliding over his expression like an eclipse. But Isabella knew this was merely the beginning. The world unraveled before them, allowing for no return but the path forward. The silence hung poised as she absorbed the significance of the moment, a figurative crossroads converging within the city's pulsing core. A single gesture, barely more than a whispered breath, drew her attention away, a silhouette slipping into the background, weaving among destiny's threads. "Now," Isabella murmured, her voice intimate with the shadows, a whisper promising more than victory, entire liberation yet to unfold. "Your mother was a waitress." The words hit Isabella with the force of a sucker punch, sparking memories she didn't even know she had. Her mother's gentle hands, long stained with espresso and ink, as she held a small Isabella close. It was a vague homage to hope in adversity, memory that hadn't surfaced in years. Isabella had inherited her mother's toughness, cloaked in grace, a waitress fighting invisible battles. The rain painted shiny ribbons down the street as Isabella pulled her coat tighter against the chill that dug beneath layers. Each heartbeat thudded with the weight of choices barely made, like the pulse of a city in its noisy slumber, shaking itself awake into awareness. Inside Isabella's pocket was a small, worn-out photograph she had found among her father's things, her mother, younger, holding her as a baby in the cafe they owned. It was a symbol of resilience passed through generations, a silent voice urging her not to bow, but to fight on. That night, the city seemed to breathe around her, streetlights quivering with secrets as more shadows emerged, converging on the understated epicenter that Isabella had become. Marco met her gaze across the crowded room, understanding between them unspoken, yet profound. "You can't keep this up," Marco cautioned, his fingers tracing the edges of a coffee cup left behind. "It's like throwing yourself against a wall, Bella." She sighed, knowing his words came wrapped in care, a protective brotherliness amid their nightly routines. "It's worth the fight," Isabella declared, bracing herself against doubt like a ship maintaining its course against relentless tides. Suddenly, the cafe door creaked open, letting in a gust of cold air mingled with adrenaline. In walked men cloaked in suits, their demeanor demanding attention and silence. They retrieved an unassuming envelope from within their coat, an invitation to the lion's den. Her heart beat erratically as Alvaro's challenge arrived, scripted on cream vellum, his script elaborate and daunting. It was an invite she couldn't decline. "Are you really considering this?" Marco asked, eyes wide under the cafe's flickering lights. Isabella nodded, an inner reckoning casting long shadows. "It's either an end or a new beginning. Either way, the journey is just as important." Her defiance was a drug she craved and feared. Each night became a vigil, counting heartbeats in the silence as she wove her plans among the shadows in her small apartment. The day of the meeting dawned unexpectedly clear, clouds a draped pattern across the blue sky. Isabella's walk across the cobblestones echoed assertiveness, her resolve as unstinting as the sun breaking through the city's ancient facade. The headquarters of Alvaro's empire loomed ahead, formidable against the skyline, a fortress of power concealed behind polished stone. She entered through the side, unseen yet entirely present. As Isabella stepped inside, a cocktail of apprehension and anticipation fizzed in her veins, mixing with the lingering scent of cigar smoke and polished leather, a signature of wealth and excess. A sprawling ballroom engulfed her. Alvaro's realm was opulence itself, but one built on whispers haunting every corner. Music played, a tremor of violins vibrating in the depths of her chest. She imagined each note a call to the weary souls bound beneath the gilded glamour. Suddenly, Alvaro's voice cut through the melody, commanding as ever. "Miss Isabella, You've accepted my invitation." There he stood, presence imposing amid the luminescent glow, a lion gloating over its domain. Beside him, his consigliere observed her silently, measuring the potential she posed. The floor beneath seemed to heave, shifting the perception of safety into an orchestration of calculated chaos. Isabella held her ground, courage a banner she refused to lower. "I accept many invitations," Isabella replied, calm weaving through her words like silk. "But I remain only where change is welcome." Their eyes locked in silent warfare, each word weighted by the unspoken realities threading through the air. "You surprise me," Alvaro admitted, tracing his hand over a crystal glass reflecting shattered spectrums of light. Isabella's gaze flickered, absorbing the scene, the collected criminals unaware of the insidious threat simmering within their orchestrated order. "What exactly do you want, Isabella?" Alvaro asked, stepping closer, each footfall an elegant threat. "You're a small cog, nothing more." Her heart surged with the truth she carried. "I want freedom for those you claim ownership of, those scared to walk in their own daylight. You need to understand what you truly have." Laughter ripple curled through the room, mocking her naivete, a sound forged in cynicism. Yet it was she who would incite them to a transformative revelation. A movement near the edge of the crowd snagged her semblance of peace, revealing Sephra, her protege, restless and resolute amidst the distractions. Unyielding, Isabella focused on the task at hand, aware of every thread of humanity she represented against Alvaro's unnervingly elegant savagery. "You spoke once of alliances," Isabella noted, her words choosing deliberate time and place. "Now understand what power truly means, truth in its rare, unbending beauty." In that instant, Isabella's plan unfurled, every step choreographed through mindful strategy. She revealed the forged alliance with those unnoticed by society, a revelation both dormant and disruptive, one that would unravel the tapestry of domination. Alvaro's expression shifted, shadows dancing beneath his eyes like forgotten fears taking shape. "You believe you can change this world?" he inquired, voice low, almost curious. "Change is inevitable. It's the determination that decides the outcome." Isabella turned slightly, wisdom cradling her tone. "You built your empire on fear. I'll tear it down with courage, every pillar, every facade. I have a city, a people, ready to rise alongside me." At the defining moment, the room grew still, each breath a song of what could have been and what could be yet. Transformation birthed from silence, a subversion of what they had believed unyielding. And then the distinct, quiet click of a hidden camera flashed behind Alvaro, unnoticed by others, immersed in his majesty, unexpected sentinel, capturing every word, every nuance. Realizations dawned over those present, forcing introspection onto the hardened hearts. With drawn composure, Isabella stepped back. The future remained unformed, a silhouette in the abyss, and she eyed the possibility it represented. There was no retreat now as alliances blossomed in the heart of defiance, a shadow slipping away, an echo of potential. "It's only a beginning," Isabella murmured, a ripple in the vanishing light, the stroke of destiny awaiting its next chapter. Rain battered the old town square, each drop descending like a myriad of tiny glass needles against the cobblestones. Isabella stood at the edge, a dark silhouette against the crimson hues of a looming evening. She seemed swallowed by the world surrounding her, yet imbued with a strength that defied her slight frame. Her trench coat flapped with the wind's ferocity, and above, the ominous roll of thunder hinted at turmoil, both elemental and personal. The cafe she'd once considered a haven now closed behind her like the final bars of a cage. Isabella walked away from it, rain mingling with the salt of nerve-induced sweat on her brow, a concoction that electrified her senses and drowned out the sound of an old life echoing in the distance. "Do you ever regret, Isabella?" Sephra's voice was barely audible over the din of raindrops, both an inquiry and a challenge. "Regret isn't part of the equation," Isabella replied, the fierce edge to her voice unyielding, a blade forged in resolve. Her eyes, once an invisible map of quiet determination, now reflected the storm captured in the sky above. "I focus on the bonds de cost, on what will come afterward." Sephra looked at her mentor with a mix of admiration and fear. emotions carved from time spent in darkness, shared whispers in poorly lit rooms, where truths were heavier than rusted chains. Each footstep they took remained deliberate, a statement against the shadows, which clung to their pursuit like an unwanted memory. As they moved through back alleys under the shroud of night, the city's own heartbeat joined sensually dangerous silence. Isabella could feel the city's breath heavy with secrets, the pulsating rhythm of backdoor deals and entrenched alliances. "Are you ready for what comes next?" Isabella asked, her gaze fixed on the path that shielded her insecurities as they reached the alleyway's end, a cracked mirror of life under Alvaro's reign. Pressure threatened to boil over, twisting her sense of balance, leaving a sharp tang of vulnerability in the air. Alvaro had summoned her again, a cease in hostilities, a meeting veiled as parley but in essence a taunt. The day unfurled slowly, stretched taut across time, itching with an urgency Isabella couldn't set aside. From the narrow window of her small lodging, she watched the world pass in monochrome, a cascade of gray tones mirroring the complex dance of morality and impunity unfolding. She revisited the plans laid in secret havens, examining the fault lines between intent and consequence, aware they could fracture beneath even sparkling certainty. Little did she suspect thin strands of trust would bear weight of incredible stresses untold. As hours passed with ephemeral patience, she prepared mind-spinning strategies against potential shifts, envisioning countermoves poised elegantly between possibility and absurdity. Night came as a cloak, the chosen veil for resolving unresolved narratives. A new safe house served as their stage, walls imbued with an overwhelming scent of mildew, guarded by those to whom Isabella's life had tied by intention rather than fate. She could discern the summation of fear in the air of bitterness, weaving through conversation and conspiratorial murmurings. "Are you sure she's up to this?" an unfamiliar voice questioned, doubt casting a shadow over the awaiting confrontation. Lorenzo, steadfast in his belief, replied with a quiet certainty, "Isabella has never chosen what's easy over what's right." Sefer shot a glance at Isabella, seeking reassurance in a world where certainties wavered like candle flames against the night. And yet, Isabella's presence anchored them. "I'll meet him," Isabella confirmed, her resolve solidified through whispered plans exchanged in confidentiality, but not on his terms. Lorenzo responded with a subtle nod, marking departure from his usual guarded demeanor, a confirmation she hadn't realized she sought, his approval an unexpected balm in a wasteland of doubt. Inside out fate held in secret. Every spore led back to the ultimate revelation to redefine Alvaro's carefully laid web. From whispered allegiances arose intelligence unexpected, a conjecture riddled with risk but steering toward resolution. In the heart of cold imperfection, the warehouse loomed, a structure on the periphery of city memory, submerged in shadows like deep ocean wrecks scattered through marine graveyards. The pivotal meeting was set. Again, Isabella cloaked inner trepidations with familiar composure. Each inhale an affirmation, a pretense to ground the unveiled chaos spotlighted upon her. By the crumbling structure, Isabella stood firm, symbolic of a single candle challenging the encroaching dark. Alvaro appeared, like smoke materializing from a distant fire, bringing his influence, a pressure palpable, tangible only in his momentary absence. "It's an end then," Alvaro's voice drew like a taunt riding on the breeze, a challenge layered among veiled intimidation. Isabella replied, each word a ribbon of unexpected strength. "An end only if you choose it, Alvaro. Power isn't permanent. It's an illusion that you built on shifting sands." He appraised her, layers of his stern veneer peeling away momentarily. "And what truth do you hold against that illusion?" Isabella produced a small, seemingly innocuous object. Weathered notebook, its pages bound with threads stronger than mere fabric. Unseen threads interlocked through destiny, a ledger of misdeeds and accounts of all those wronged. "Years of recorded trespasses," Isabella declared, staking her claim against his empire unraveling overtly, a maestro to an unsought symphony. Alvaro laughed, a sound both mocking and conceding, yet sharp enough to cut, as it echoed through the vaulting space beneath peeling beams. "You think paper will defy mountains?" he questioned, shrouding bravado with unflinching facade. Momentum gathered around them like the spreading flame whispers across dryness. Those who had borne witness before remained statue-like, while Isabella's ensemble moved, emerging from obscured shadows with tales too pressing to remain within vaults of suppression. Yet inside truths failed to abate, instead weaving a larger narrative, where strength and fragility intermingled, where Isabella stood steadfast. The stones cracked beneath her feet as she chose this stand, where truth and justice found kinship despite the morass of pretenses. The fragile connection forged here would reverberate through hollow places, echoing among whispers, long silent, seeking liberation, tangled in convolutions barely comprehensible to those blind to consequence. For Isabella, the realization unfolded quietly, like petals seeking sunlight, dawn to enlighten the ignorant, critical clarity cutting through the murk. Rain doesn't wash away everything, Isabella finally said, a metaphor for her persistence, her pledge to uncover what others had cloaked. Turning, she faced them, Alvaro and the assembled minions of a fading rainer, resolute back against what had oppressed. The echoes of fate common currented in the city's underbelly marked destiny, wrapping life and mystery into existence, as Isabella's gaze set upon the horizon, fraught with the promise of change. Without another word, Isabella melted into the gathering storm, a woman not done with struggles, but defining them by her marches, her silent vows respected. In that pause, a single shadow remained, watching from afar its significance indiscernible, a veiled harbinger of what absence had begun anew. The rain held witness, still relentless, in its declaration never concluded. The sound pierced through the chaos of Isabella's mind, a gunshot echoing as though prophesying battles ahead. Dim light seeped through the heavy drapes inside the dimly lit room, yet every sense in Isabella's body was acutely aware, pulling at threads unseen but felt. The air, thick with the fragrance of cigars mingling with aged whiskey, seemed a wise old sage keeping secrets, but never revealing them willingly. Isabella, once standing at the fringe of destiny, now dwelled in its very epicenter. Her footsteps, inaudible on the richly woven carpets of the library, barely disturbed the conspicuous silence. The tableau was deceptively calm, an oasis amid the storm looming outside. But Isabella herself presented a picture of mismatched truths, a waitress wrapped in the guise of those who stood with accepted authority, not given but taken. The walls bore witness to countless discussions soaked in power-laden epiphanies, yet inside their familiar confines, Isabella appeared off guard, understatement wrapped in steel. The symbolism heavy-toned her late mother's necklace, which Isabella clutched within her palm, holding history and defiance in its delicate links. An unexpected conversation from earlier replayed in her thoughts, uttered during their clandestine meeting. "What do you gain from this?" Lorenzo had questioned, the gravity of the undertaking written in the lines around his eyes. "Understanding," Isabella replied softly, more to herself, casting shadows tail-laden behind tired eyes, "and a future whose price is no longer misfortune." They had discussed plans amid the static hum of ongoing rain, palpable tension wrapped in well-worn resolve amongst those bound not by blood, but shared principles. From the corner of her eye, a slim figure emerged, Sephra, her mentee and fellow conspirator in this rebellion. Isabella's awareness flared towards Sephra's silent presence, her dedication etched visibly amid youthful features. "You're sure about this, right?" Sephra's voice was a hushed plea, the space enveloping them all ears. "Yes." Isabella breathed certainty into the room, as her reply wrapped Sephra in newfound conviction. "For every shadow we leave behind, we shine twice as bright." But charm disguised vulnerability as the moment unfurled. Soon came the evening's central crescendo, a call to action, tangible like sheets of electric gray that the city wrapped around her, promising uncharted complexities. Pressure crescendoed as Isabella received summons to the heart of the enemy stronghold, situated within the sprawling house at the city's edge, where affluent shadows grew long and conspiracies thrived unchecked. The storm rattled windows, resonating through the halls like a clandestine symphony, playing to an unseen audience of cityscape echoes, masking unsung battles. With each step, history seeped through the cracks of cobbled alleys and carefully tilled streets, voices rising through grates like whispers of lore, Isabella's story weaving among those threads unbroken. When she arrived, Alvaro greeted her presence amid his extravagant den. Standing there, a solitary figure wrapped in mismatched power from her ballerina stance to the delicate weapons sheathed at her hip like an afterthought, too tantalizing to resist. Alvaro's eyes were veiled dark against reflections of character, dimmed by shadow. "You walk willingly on the edge of this abyss, Isabella?" his voice queried, basting every word with unperturbed confidence. Isabella held his gaze, masking nerves with the practice of intent. Facing him, she glanced toward the symbol tattooed onto her wrist, an emblem of resilience rooted in heritage untold. "Willingly," she replied, each syllable a ripple cutting through the stagnant atmosphere. "It's time we balance the scales you tilted." And so the evening progressed like an orchestra seeking its peak, tension coiled, waiting to debark toward climax amid the sound of Isabel and Alvaro forever entwined. Escalation permeated, every nuance resonating through her chest. Isabella's Aliasa, silent sentinel, shifting through hidden pathways of influence, seized their own initiatives across the district. Intelligence unearthed secrets Alvaro had perceived hidden. His allies watched Isabella, perceptibly dismissing her significance. Yet their misjudgment was her strength, their skepticism weaving mutual protection. Sudden as a revelation, Isabella produced documents rendered within fragile hands. Their contents, akin to Pandora's box, chronicled the innumerable infractions buried in smug sanctity. "Years of betrayal sealed in wax," Isabella proclaimed, eyes pinning Alvaro under accusation fledged in revelation. With incredulity merged into fleeting fury, Alvaro's foundation teetered a dynasty nurtured amid plotted paranoia, faced ruin beneath pen and paper's unyielding might. The room vibrated beneath cascades of dissent, voices rising with underestimated vigor as decisions rippled through converging plots untold. Isabella's steps faltered not, purpose filling every fleeting glance and whispered aside. When Alvaro's advisors mutinied their own loyalty, compelled by survival or honor, she watched as the serpentine belt unraveled. Through unfolding intricacies, Isabella held her morale as persisting reality shifted into resolution, born from culmination orchestrated by shadows. At the core, deception withered under Isabella's direction, palm pitted against the remnants, struggling against reticence. Under dissension's sour cacophony, Isabella's body laid witness to averted justice reframed. Thus, the storm subsided, though remnants dwelled, sowing aside narratives as Isabella's impact echoed where none had expected. The subtle notions of wisdom procured through her clear passage steered through vitriol-etched corridors, further into unveiling truth. And when the dust settled, amid confrontation's shattered kaleidoscope, Isabella stood within equilibrium restored. "Truth finds its own path," she whispered softly, the refrain weaving clarity into uncertainty. For Isabella embraced the role clarity summoned toward the horizon. As anointed shadow met fragmented light, she lingered in hope, shy from surrender. Yet a single fragment of foreboding remained, a silhouette unclaimed beneath pallid moonlight's lustrous rindi, a moment drawing breath for shadows converging anew. A flash of lightning split the sky, casting a white-hot illumination across the unadorned meeting room where Isabella stood. Her reflection was caught momentarily in the window, a flash of determination inside grays and blues that painted her outline against the tempest. Winds howled as if nature itself echoed an internal war she barely comprehended, yet had unwittingly spearheaded. Rain pounded ruthlessly against the glass panes all around, promising desperation but whispering possible redemption. Inside, amid the stark conference room's empty expanse, Isabella allowed herself a brief moment of vulnerability before fortifying her spirit. The air was seasoned with must and old wood, reminders lodged in the decay of what had once been Alvaro's fortress, now hollow, diminished. Isabella felt the cold shadow crawling across her spine, the certainty sketched into Alvaro's vacant chair still sending ripples of control, although his actual presence lacked. "You're not so invisible anymore," a voice emerged from a distant corridor, laced with a strange blend of recognition and reluctance, as Lorenzo stepped into the light. His presence neither announced nor concealed. Isabella turned, letting her defiance meet his steady, layered gaze. She could sense doubt flickering like an old filament between them, a suspension of belief that flavored every interaction. Lorenzo's loyalty had bolstered her, yet his careful observation bore the weight of shared burdens. "We don't have much time," Isabella began, words chosen with the precision of navigating a minefield. Each syllable was calculated, primed to ignite into what's to transpire. "Before Alvaro returns and solidifies whatever weak hold he imagines he has over this place." For these walls hung stories of untold false victories, alliances of convenience, and betrayals disguised as friendships. Lorenzo nodded, a flicker of approval seen in the soft clenching of his jaw, a momentary release from stoic resolve. Empowered by Isabel's invocation of confidence, Lorenzo replied, casting his vote of action amidst the silent vote of shadows that had long watched. "We have allies coming forces, stirred into motion by your actions, Isabella." The simple statement carried with it the breath of momentum, conceived through whispered trust and outmaneuvered sequences enacted in alleys, gathering places once hidden, but now awakened with resolve. Yet with knowledge of reinforcements came an equal realization of growing immediate threats. The crisis hanging overhead crescendoed like the ceaseless rain, washing over them in waves of apprehension. Alvaro's strength lies in his underestimation, Isabella recognized, voicing the underlying strategy where enemy presumption formed false security. Her memories danced to the forefront, whispers in the dark, inherited courage, and loyal alliances never anticipated by their organized predation-driven nemesis. A quick movement broke her train of thought. Sephra's entrance wrapped in focus, her pace silent yet aggressive as Isabella's youthful counterpart joined. Sephra's presence injected a fresh urgency, tangible, youthful fervor, steadied by the blanket of determination Isabella nurtured within her. "We need to move," Sephra urged, eyes vivid with urgency, contradicted by steely composure stretching beyond her years. She encapsulated the essence of fearless progression, emerging in the face of overwhelming narratives, threatening to suppress truth. Isabella gathered them into a circle of confidence and remarked softly, "Remember, each motion completes a movement, each beat ignites a pulse felt throughout the core." The complexity lay heavier now, compounded by time and actions need to precipitate. Having her decisions only enabled deceit, one peril now recognized, the other sourced through strength, both existing along a single thread, Isabella fearlessly upheld. Crucial moments fell like rain. Determination colored each gathering step. The hour late, the city resonated silence, kissed by ferocity of storm, outside's backdrop, tumultuous yet serene in its inevitability. Isabella's recital came to culmination as tension shed its presence. Moments clarified within Isabel's internal precipice, even as dawn slipped its threads among the waning dark. Nostalgia seeped into Isabella's consciousness, memories acting as guardians prodding past mistakes lest they bloom anew within manipulated fracas. The revelation simmered that power, unclaimed potential, nestled in perception's fold, hid her true capacity. As accomplices, humbled, not cowed, pledged their acceptance, Isabella readied for power's turning point. Alvaro's domain awaited its redefinition, though stable in form, unpredictable in consequences. Her decisive move came during the calm that followed the storm of spearhead thrust into Empire's core, disguised beneath mundane demeanor. "The world's unlike the labyrinths you've designed," Isabella murmured, resolving her bold claim as freedom shadowed each unshackled directive. Surrounded by breathtaking quiet, Isabella pressed past, leading them straight forward as acceptance transitioned silently into execution. In the confrontation's burgeoning wake, silence sowed understanding. Reparation derived from challenge met, from belief extracted out of darkness. She anchored herself, ready to confront, yet resolved peace emerged tied neatly within tangled threads. Meeting their foes meant facing shadow's residual forms, but Isabella, as victor, found solace brooding beneath acknowledged guilt. For the shadows reshaped by her resolve lived equally in past errors as earnest desires shaping new constructs. Finally, caught between anticipation and lingering consequence, Isabella stood ready, resonance stretched, a challenge tilting destiny's course. With each heartbeat, Comprehension claimed its place, justice unwavering, defined not by past alone, but future undone. The sway of light breaking storm's passage cast a fleeting silhouette, a testimony of what's revealed yet to come. "You're never too late when uncovering truth," Isabella whispered, truth hemmed within shadow, distilling trust anew. As she walked forward, each footfall represented liberation as survival bent under freedom's weight. And at that instant, an unexpected noise fractured the stillness, resettling truths as something sharp, a shadow slicing across the room. The metallic click resonated in the cathedral of silence, a harbinger for stories yet unwritten. Gunmetal scent mingled with distant echoes, an olfactory memory that Isabella recognized instantly, the signature frosted both with fear and anticipation. She stood alone within the dusty remnants of what used to be a grand ballroom. Remnants of her steps stirred the air. They whispered defiance as she walked. Threads woven into intricate designs curled beneath her feet, as though lives entwined themselves in that luxurious carpet. The ballroom mirrored the solemnity of her newfound determination, expansive and empty, but for the history sewn into every surface. Flanked by decaying tapestries, ancestors watched with woven eyes, bearing witness to the staging of her silent revolution. An ornate chandelier hung precariously above, casting shards of light that latticed the room with gold. Isabella adjusted her posture, grappling beneath the weight of unseen eyes, judgments unspoken yet ever present, watching a soul figure reborn in the skin of resilience. The anonymity she once cloaked herself in had begun its metamorphosis into a mantle of consequence. "There's a part of me that never left," she whispered to herself, her reflection fragmented but visible in the tarnished glass of an antique Baroque mirror. Hers was a narrative portrayed through glances, whispers, and the tangible pulse of the city's secrets, her roots tunneled deep, ensuring she would not be easily unseated. The solitude of the ballroom was deceptive, a prelude to impending confrontations. The weight of what lay ahead pressed upon her resolve like a hand cupped against her heart. Alvaro was a shadow yet undispersed, his legacy untethered but for her determination casting to the winds his empire's foundation of fear. Her breath hitched slightly as the specter of Alvaro marked an upcoming encounter. A message flickered through old channels, coded in language universally ominous among the city's underworld. Pressure mounted, a construct of moments drawn tight across enough body moments where decision teetered on the blade's edge of urgency. Alvaro had once been her city's specter, intangible, an omnipresent force declared in whispered stories and speculative what-ifs. She could feel the faith of those she had never met, a pressure deeper and more colorful than the weave of intention known to many. Yet, even within the certainty of her risk actions lay isolation. For this was a solitary path she walked, unaccompanied by the assurance others pined for. That was the nature of disbelief dismantled, for it singled her against a world hesitant to embrace rebellion's child. Scrutiny dovetailed scrutiny, escalating an indifference that crested and surged like an unforgiving tide. Challenges externalized through faces unrecognized. Challenges internalized echoed the voices of her self-doubt. Even the familiar comfort of Sephra's resolve lent transient support to brief surge against the deeper undertow of Alvaro's unseen weave. The evening air outside felt thicker, every move magnified through the drumming rain, tracing rebellion's score beneath the city's persistent heartbeat. But here, in the lacuna between rain and room, Isabella's conviction solidified. This place, its silent elegance beating, questing for echoers, was her crucible, from which her creation would emerge, armored, recognized. A metamorphosis loomed unsought but welcome, waiting behind the film of anticipation split open by quiet necessity. The combat of perspective saw Isabella embracing uplift through the present's reticence. It was Lorenzo's steady reassurance, meaning stretched between trust pledged without sight, that reached her. His presence offered more than support, an affirmation that she was not isolated amid the encroaching shadows. "Stories never end in silence, Isabella," Lorenzo's reminder previously delivered, sounding faint chord through her consciousness. "You'll discover moaning at their heart." Memory flooded, visions uncoiling, her mother's delicate battle with society's dismissive gaze, her struggle now reclaimed, acknowledged through Isabella's rebellion. Symbols and tokens, which she bore yet eschewed, sat heavy with significance, an anchor maintaining equilibrium through chaos's dance. But uncertainty called the narrative, rushing past visible contrasts as she readied against the shifting boundaries of threat. Lifted by emotional echoes, Isabella projected a strength unexpected by antagonists whose understanding remained sculpted from assumptions. Her Three-Tharger veil had grown across the separating void, threads both defensive and allocative, as if the city's pulse bid her grow beyond what even imagination outlined. Within the woven illusions, though scattered unforced, realization rendered motivation tangible for the first time. Alvaro's challenge manifested, set against the backdrop of rain-struck windows carried by the air infused with autumn spice. Symbolism captured within objects, unfurled narratives now exposed, wrenching free the boundaries which imprisoned. Intentions lined upon her lips, ready to unravel truths shrouded beneath the charred legacy of his dreams. Declaration arrived, unveiled a slight in motion and unobtrusive slip toward confrontation's fire without hesitation. Beyond the shadow's recoil, Isabella revealed what Alvaro thought, hidden and unfolding reality sculpted as sin reached through obfuscation's scaffolding. Her hands traced the document offered, its pages sealing fates to rectify through unravel. Its simple truths, woven by passion, endured. The mounting crescendo broke, igniting turbulence into solemn tempos, framing within the fugue-cresting night. Beneath deception's taut tapestry, Isabella laid her answer at their feet, threading revelation unyielding. As acts subsided, turning nuanced equations from dismay into dawn's redemption, Isabella's flourished presence lent judgment halt. Here lay narrative's reclaimed power, an offering validated by grace and introspection, freed. When resolution came, its contours brushed the past, layering the horizon in motifs brighter still, unwavering amid crowns fallen unseen. Yet dawning lay unfinished, its conscripts nameless, the scaffold's risen tail knit loose and poised. Amid collective release, the quiet stirred hope. Beneath tired lashes weighted by destiny unfurling, reflections sparked in imagined generations untold, content in the shadow's grasp. As Isabella walked forward, relentless in acceptance's passage, silence draped itself, her protector where isolation marked moments rarely grasped, and a solitary thought persisted, escaping the Warren's labyrinth. With poised acquiescence, the gentle rain fell then, carrying promise a shift that whispered new realities yet unspooled. A specter shifted upon the air briefly, stepping across attention's unstated yet loud, soft enigma, missing opacity's form. In Isabella's heart, courage fortified by consequence silently expanded, hinting at the clarity sought within clouds now encircling what destiny unveiled through the timeless arrangements of intent. Until the echo quieted. Then the shadows lengthened toward dawn, leaving only Isabella's tentative hope suspended a mark, between reality made anew, a fulcrum balancing dreams restored. "I've always been invisible," Isabella whispered, her words dissipating like smoke against the chilling night air. "But in this moment, I am seen." Her eyes reflected the flickering neon of the bar sign above her, each blink a testament to the storm she had survived. The city pulsated around her, a living entity, sheltering secrets and dreams within its concrete heart. Addiction to the chaos, the heady mix of fear and power once leached her sanity, yet tonight it invigorated her. The rain-slicked streets mirrored her journey, a reflection both distorted and mesmerizing. Isabella moved through the alleyways with a grace learned from years of navigating uncertainty, her presence unnoticed, but felt. Her coat gathered the evening's drizzle like a penitent shroud. Each footstep was deliberate, a cadence measured against the murmurs of those who thought they knew her. "You're just a waitress," they used to tell her. Words that once echoed with finality now seemed hollow. She had become more in shadows than the light ever allowed, her existence a sculpted myth of streets they dismissed. In the labyrinthine back streets, the haze of cigarette smoke wrapped around her as she slipped inside a dim speakeasy, a meeting place for whispers and ghosts. Patrons paid her no mind, lost in their worlds, oblivious to the quiet storm walking among them. Alvaro's summons had been unexpected, yet anticipated, a final confrontation written in the stars above the sprawling city. The letter clutched within her pocket carried decisions heavier than any night could hold. "You sure about this, Bella?" Marco asked, appearing like a ghost from the sepia-toned past. She smiled gently, her resolve etched into every line of her face. "Not sure, Marco. Just ready." "There's a difference," Marco nodded, accepting her truth even as the weight of the night settled into his shoulders. The past weeks had bound them in a clandestine, waltz-crafted plans overlapping over hand-scribbled maps, coded messages exchanged under the guise of casual talks. The walls of the cold room, littered with the whispers of former patrons, knew their secrets. Yet tonight the room was silent, poised as though it bore witness to their stories turning. The atmosphere crackled with latent tension, reality on the verge of being rewritten. Olivaro's shadow loomed larger tonight, an empire on the cusp of collapse or reclamation. "I always admired your tenacity." His voice slithered through air rich with cigar smoke, the cadence a slow, sardonic melody. Standing opposite him, Serena, a figure of defiance sculpted from years of invisibility, now stood unwavering. "You established this kingdom," she articulated calmly, "but tonight it trembles. The power of one begins where the complacency of many ends." His laughter echoed, tinged with disbelief. "What makes you think you can topple what took decades to build?" From her coat, Isabella revealed the letter, its contents raw yet meticulous. An exposé of transactions bearing Alvaro in the chains he forged for others. Her silent rebellion became his public undoing, deeds cast forth from whispered darkness into glaring light. "A network can bind," she responded, the conviction locked in her gaze, unfazed by his defiance, "or it can unravel magnificently." The balance shifted in unseen horizons. Alvaro's allies, once staunch, now perched precariously as reality seeped into the cracks of their fortified fables. His composure faltered. A kingdom built on threads began its descent. The truth struck like thunder, each revelation a storm breaking upon his empire. Tides now turned, Isabella's path illuminated by choices made amidst shadows long lamented. Stillness blanketed the room, an eerie counterpoint to the wild veracity of her outmaneuver. In that defining beat, Isabella saw the disintegration of Alvaro's veneer, peeling back the opulence, revealing rot. The remnants of silence stretched. Isabella's assertion bore weight far stronger than iron. She equated herself not in the strength of resolve alone, but the culmination of her ancestors whispering from shadowed lines in unity. Alvaro watched, defiance ebbing into reluctant respect. "And what will you do now?" Isabella's expression softened, resolution melding with empathy. She was poised before the precipice of rebirth. "Time for you and I to walk different paths," she offered simply, her tone unyielding but compassionate. With that, she turned, the city absorbed her again, reclaiming its daughter as its narrative bore her into the paths awaiting. Each echo of her steps felt the beat of her past's surrender and her future's embrace. As the night embraced her, Isabella felt the weight of potential, vast as the horizon. From behind, as she vanished into the awakening dawn, a gentle voice rippled through time, a succinct, mysterious echo. "The shadow moves." The unpredictable current murmured, sealing whispers inside the womb of destiny, waiting beyond the retreating night's edge.